Good day, and welcome to Lesson 18 in our study of the book of Daniel. So tonight we're going to start chapter 10. And really chapters 10, 11, and 12 should be taken as one complete session, but there's really too much to be involved to do this all at one time. So I'm going to split it up into sections. But it's really all about one great vision, Daniel's third vision. So we're going to do the first 9 verses today in chapter 10. And this sort of introduces the idea of this vision. There are two things you have to really accept in this. First of all, Daniel is a man of prayer. He's been in Babylon for over 70 years as a slave, as a prisoner. He never returned to his homeland of Judea. And yet he never lost his faith in the Hebrew God. He never stopped praying. He never stopped conversing with God. And as a result, God gave him these miraculous visions. And we have seen from the last chapter the prayers that he went through on behalf of his people and on behalf of Israel. And when he found out that the 70 years in which Israel is supposed to be captive, those 70 years were almost up, he went into this prayer which we hid in chapter 9, convert on behalf of the people of Israel and repenting for all the sins that they had done. And as a result of this, as a result of the end of the years of captivity, and perhaps as a result in part of Daniel's prayer, Cyrus the king of Persia had released the Israeli people to go back to their homeland, rebuild their city, and rebuild their temple. Now as we start chapter 10, it says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belshazzar. And this is the 3rd year. In chapter 9, it was in the 1st year. And this was 2 years after the people who had gone back, who had been allowed to go back to Judea, had started their migration back. But yet, it appears that of all the people that were captive and held captive in Babylon that should go back to Judah to rebuild the city and rebuild the temple, only about 50,000 did so. The rest had become so ingrained in the Babylonian culture and so ingrained in the Babylonian lifestyle that they did not go back. And this resulted in another huge problem. And Daniel is saying, in the 3rd year, this message was revealed to Daniel about this situation. It says the message was true. So what Daniel received was accurate and was flawless and was the actual truth. But the appointed time was long. In other words, the time from when Daniel received this message to its fulfillment was a long period of time. Would be a long period of time. So the message was true, but the time to its fulfillment was going to be quite an extended period of time. And Daniel understood the message and had understanding of the vision. So the vision was made known to Daniel so that he could understand it. This was in the 3rd year of Cyrus the king of Persia. Daniel received this vision. And this is the preparation for this vision, because he said, in those days, Daniel was mourning 3 full weeks. He ate no pleasant food, no meal of wine, some came into my stomach, nor did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. Daniel had this feeling of foreboding. He had this feeling almost of a depression, almost he had this anxiety about something being wrong, and he put himself into this funk where he really ate little, he didn't bathe properly, he didn't look after himself properly for 3 full weeks. Now, this may have had something to do with what was going on outside of the earth at this time, which we'll see in next week's study. But for 3 weeks, this turmoil was going on within Daniel. And part of this was because of the fact that the Jewish people had not returned to Judea as they had been instructed to do and as they had been free to do. So Daniel had this 3-week period of angst where he just wasn't eating properly. He was mourning. He didn't really look after himself well at all. 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. Now, one of the things that we have to understand about this is that there are scenes in this vision that are hard for us to comprehend and to believe and to accept sometimes. We believe we're in a scientific age where everything should be scientifically proven or scientifically adept. And what Daniel relates and what the Bible relates as happening to Daniel is entirely outside the realm of scientific evidence. Because he's talking about the spirit world. He's talking about problems that go on in a world outside of our own humanity. And this is what is being revealed. We talked before about the angel Gabriel. And in order to accept these visions, you have to have some acceptance of angels and of spirits. If you believe in the Holy Spirit, you believe in spirits. So this is really a little bit further than most, and this sometimes is why these verses and these chapters aren't talked about as often as they probably should be. So Daniel was mourning. He was in this funk. He was in this state of almost depression for these 3 weeks. And he says, on the 24th day of the first month, I was by the side of the river Tigris. He was walking by the river. I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen. Linen was not the usual dress of people in those days, but this man was clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. This is a description of someone who is not human, of a being from the spirit world. Now, there has been argument as to whether this is an angel or whether this is a appearance of Christ in the Old Testament. And the description of this man is very similar to that given in Revelation. If you go to Revelation chapter 1, starting at verse 12, then I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. This is very similar to what Daniel is describing here. A certain man, waist girded with gold, body like a beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. The question always has been, and depending upon which commentary you read, is this an appearance of Christ? And the question is, why does he require help, as is revealed in the next part of the chapter? Or is it the appearance of Gabriel or some other angel? And if so, why is the appearance so similar to that of Christ in Revelation? So it's some question as to whether this is an Old Testament appearance of Christ or whether it is an angel. In any case, it's some supernatural, spiritual being. The description of him, of this being, is similar to that ascribed to Christ in Revelation. But in spite of this, in difference to this, Daniel saw this vision. And he said, I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. The people with him, the people who were traveling with him, apparently did not. The men who rode with me did not see the vision, but a great terror fell upon them, so that they had fled to hide themselves. What if they did not see the vision? They certainly had some impression that something was happening, something which terrified them was happening. And this is very similar to what happened to Paul on the way to Damascus when Jesus spoke to him. And apparently the people with Paul did not see Christ or hear Christ, but they knew something was wrong, something had happened, something had developed. And this is evident as to what happened here. It said the people did not see the vision. Only Daniel saw it. But the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great terror fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. One of the problems is if we do meet Christ, we're never going to understand him if we hide from him. And many people today would do that because they have a fear of Christ if they don't know him. A great terror fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone when I saw this great vision. And he lost his strength. No strength remained in me, for my vigor was turned to frailty in me, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep in my face, with my face to the ground. So Daniel was so stricken by this vision that he became weak. He lost his strength. He heard the sound, but he really didn't perhaps understand them the way he should. He said he was in a sleep. He was almost knocked unconscious. And if you look back in Revelation, this is very similar to what happened to John in Revelation, when he said that when he heard the sound of the voice, I fell as if dead. I fell down as if dead, because of the fact that he was so overtaken by the vision. And I said, when I saw him, I fell at my feet as dead. But he laid his right hand to me and said to me, do not be afraid. This is what happened to Daniel. The same type of idea, that Daniel was very much both afraid and was almost knocked into unconsciousness by this vision and by the sight and by what the vision was saying to him. So this is really only the preliminary. This is the introduction to this vision. Daniel's prayer. Daniel continued to pray for the people of Jerusalem, the people who were captive, who were now allowed to return home, but were not returning home in the numbers that they should have. And there was also word that returned back to Daniel that saying that those who had returned home and had started to rebuild the temple were being put upon by the other natives, the other inhabitants of the city who had come into the city when the Judeans were absent. So strangers, strange bands, strange peoples had come in and were not happy at this rebuilding of the temple and of Jerusalem, and they were causing all sorts of grief to those who had returned. So all this bad news had reached Daniel, and this is one reason why he was praying, why he was alone. One of the reasons why he probably felt ill at heart. He felt depressed. He said he was mourning for 3 full weeks, and this was probably part of it. Now, as I said, there's another aspect that's coming in the next part of the chapter, which we'll talk about next week. But Daniel was in a state of angst. He was in a state of prayer. He was in a state of worry. And he was there traveling by himself along the river when he had this vision, which led and will lead to the third great prophecy, which he is involved with, the third great vision. So this is only the introduction to this. This is only the beginning of this. And we're going to break this up into little sections over the next few weeks, so we can hopefully understand the whole part of the vision and the whole part of what Daniel, or what was relayed to Daniel by the angel. So this started when Daniel, by the river, in a period of angst, he saw this heavenly being, whether it was an angel or whether it was an Old Testament manifestation of Christ. But whoever it was, it overwhelmed him. He was afraid. Terror fell on the people around him, and he was left alone. And he felt weak. He felt frail. He was almost knocked unconscious. He was in a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. And then next week, we'll get into what happened with the start of this vision. So this is only a brief introduction to it, but it's important to understand how this all started. It's important to understand how we have to accept the fact that there is a spiritual world, that there is a world beyond what we can see and feel and touch. And this is where a lot of the conflict and a lot of the both problems and solutions are held for us. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and we'll get on to next week further into chapter 10, starting at verse 10, about this vision and this heavenly creature that gave it to Daniel. So thanks for watching again. This is rather a brief study, but we'll get into it further next week. Thanks for watching again, and bye for now.